Hey, just in time for the holidays, what if you didn't have to worry about any of that credit card debt? If you're feeling stuck making the minimum payments and you don't want to have to put Christmas on a credit card, we can help at savewithconrad.com. We routinely help our listeners save hundreds of dollars a month. Find out how much money you can save right now for free at savewithconrad.com.
Welcome to Something to Wrestle with Bruce Prichard. Well, you know.
That's not a rib.
She pooted.
Is that a rib?
No, yeah, but
There's no box of gimmicks.
Rumor and innuendo.
I don't deal in rumor and innuendo. And was he there? I was there. I don't give a shit. I ain't scared of shit.
I ain't scared of shit.
Fuck him.
Fuck you, Bruce.
I love you.
Double cheeseburger, double cheese, double mayo, double onion, motherfucker.
Bruce Prichard. Hey, it's Conrad Thompson, and you're listening to Something to Wrestle with John Layfield. John, what's going on, man? How are you?
Sir. How you doing, Conrad? I'm down here in the Big Easy of Knowledge. You can see my cowboy hat behind me right here on my boots. Going to work a little bit tonight with Ron Simmons. May go clothesline somebody. And remember, Bradshaw 316 says, I just stole your fucking podcast.
Well, that's not very thankful of you. It is the week of Thanksgiving, and we are so thankful that you guys have been with us. John, I can't believe this is real. We've been doing this for more than a year.
Wow.
So today, we're going to do something fun. We're going to celebrate some of the highs and lows. Well, let's be honest. There were no lows in the last year of this show. Just one high after another, just one record after another. Something to Wrestle is stronger than ever. Downloads are up 35%. The sponsors are lining up. We've got a wait list. Business has picked up thanks to John Bradshaw Layfield. He is your wrestling god, and you can see him this weekend at WrestleCade. John, are you signing on Saturday at WrestleCade?
Yes, sir, I am. I'm getting there Friday, so I believe I'm signing Friday also is what I believe, but I'm there with Ron Simmons. He's going to be there both days, I believe. I'm certainly signing Saturday. There's a wrestling show that night, and you never know. I'm bringing my clotheslines with me. I got a whole bag full of clotheslines, and so I'm bringing them with me just in case.
Well, I'm fired up. I'm going to be at WrestleCade. Everybody in the wrestling world is going to be at WrestleCade. We hope to see you there. If you see me, stop me. Let's take a photo. Let's talk a little wrestling. And, of course, go see JBL and Ron Simmons. But, you know, one of the things that you and I are thankful for is that we've had one of our very good friends advertising here on the program for the last month or so. And somebody who we think maybe doesn't get enough love and respect in the wrestling business. We're going to fix that at the start of today's show. You see JBL pointing to his shirt there. He's down with the clown.
I'm a juggalo. I am an absolute juggalo. I went to the gathering. I had the best time in the world. I love Violent J. Joe is such a good dude. They've done a great job with wrestling over the years. For 20-something years, they've been running this show. It's a terrific show. And I don't know why it's getting more mainstream press. We're going to talk a little bit about it. He's done some things that I agree with that are fantastic for the company. But Joe's a good dude, man. And I'm glad that he's doing so well.
Let's welcome him into the program. I can't believe this is real. I'm so excited. Violent J of the Insane Clown Posse, and more specifically, JCW. What's going on, man? How are you?
Look, guys, I'm so grateful to be here. I'm so happy you guys are having me on the show. This is super cool. And I know the noise, the Richter scale registering noise the show has been making. It's an honor. It's a privilege. And I'm grateful to both you guys for having me on the show.
Man, we're so excited to have you here. And of course, we could talk ICP until the cows come home. I grew up on your stuff and just so honored to call you a friend. But the real initiative in the wrestling space for the past few months has been the resurgence of JCW. It was a little over a year ago. I saw the show for the first time in person in Birmingham. And I don't know if we've ever talked about this, Violent J, but one of the promoters who were there, I just happened to bump into him, and we had a quick chat, and he said that's the biggest crowd he's had since Lil Wayne years ago. And I thought that was phenomenal. That shows you the power of ICP and JCW. But I think there's a lot of misconceptions out there, Jay. I think a lot of people think that a JCW show is really an ICP concert. And sometimes you do get a 2-for-1 like that. But JCW is a lot more than just the Insane Clown Posse, right, Jay?
Oh, of course, yeah. JCW has been around for 26 years as JCW even before it was JCW, there were other shows we promoted and put on, you know. But once we established a company, it became JCW. And yes, JCW often, very often, is sort of the opening act for ICP. Like when you go to an ICP concert, the first thing you'll see is a wrestling ring in the middle of the floor with a guardrail around it. And we don't have seats. This is like almost like a concert. The ring music is concert volume. You know, all of our shows are held in rock clubs. Even the shows that JCW does without ICP, the shows JCW does on its own, is always held in rock clubs with a rock club atmosphere with the guardrail around the ring. And it's like standing room only, sort of like a concert, you know. There may be seats and stuff in the balconies or depending on the venue, but it's a very different feel. But this is something we've done, you know, from the beginning of ICP's career, basically, is had wrestling on our shows, you know. And for the last 26 years, JCW has been a part of ICP's concerts. Not all of them. Sometimes we tour with JCW, sometimes we don't. But now that JCW Lunacy is here, and that's our weekly show, we film those episodes before the ICP concert. So if you're going to see ICP on tour anytime in the near future, probably next few years, you're going to see JCW there as well. You know, it's pretty much a guarantee. But you can also go see JCW on its own. For example, in the month of January, we've got 16 shows that are primarily on the West Coast. Well, they start off in Texas and they go all the way up to Seattle. There's like 3 or 4 shows in the state of California, and then it goes through Vegas, and I believe the last show was in Denver. But that's what I'm saying. That show is just JCW. But there's other bands on the show as well. They're just not ICP. But there are other bands that happen either before the JCW show or after the JCW show. But we're very much a different type of experience, you know?
I want to co-sign that. I got to tell you, I didn't know what to expect. I have been to an ICP concert before, but I'd never been to a JCW show where there was also a concert, and it is a totally different vibe. I think you're really onto something. It's really fun. And I want to stress this to somebody who's listening to this who may think, well, I'd like to see the wrestling show, but I don't know that I'm an ICP fan, or vice versa. I'm an ICP fan, but I don't know that I'm down with the wrestling. You will have so much fun. The crowd makeup, Jay, I know you know this, but I think a lot of our listeners don't. It was as much 50-50 male to female. It was more so than I've ever seen at any other wrestling show, because it is not just sitting in seats, watching people cut promos and waiting for the commercial break. It is a live experience. It is fun. You have it down to a science to tear down the ring and set up for the concert. I've never seen a ring torn down and the transition happen so quickly. It's a well-oiled machine. I was in awe of what you guys have put together, and I don't think enough people have been talking about it, because I was really impressed with the creativity behind the characters, but also some of the performers. I want to give a quick shout out. Ninja Mac has gone viral over the last year for a lot of internet wrestling memes and clips of some of the crazy flips that he can do. You're going to see him at JCW shows. You'll also see guys like Kerry Morton and Matt Cardona. And if you grew up watching, you know, some OVW stuff, I want to mention they had a successful show on Netflix a few years ago. Haley J, she's also a part of what you guys have been doing. And very recently, I know you did a big show, Hallow Wicked. Man, it was a who's who on that show. Big stars like Caleb Conley, Willie Mack, guys that if you've been watching wrestling for a long time, like James Storm, they're all here. You've collected a great group of talent that I don't think people have been talking about. I think they've been sleeping on it. And John, I'm sure you can testify to this. Everybody who's at one of these shows has a phenomenal time. You can see it on their face.
Yeah, and I want to give Violent J a chance to answer, but I got to say, look, Conrad, you know, I've been involved in wrestling for 30-something years. I've been behind the scenes with WWE, I've been behind the scenes in a lot of different companies. I'm blown away by what Insane Clown Posse does, by what Violent J does with JCW. It's like going to a rock concert on acid or something. It's fun. It's shot incredibly well. And that's what I love so much about it. It's shot in a different way. and it's an incredibly well-run show, but it's a fun show to go to. I don't understand why they don't have more traction. I think they're getting it now because of some of the publicity, because of what they've done with bringing in Vince Russo recently. But this thing has been gold for years. They do an incredible job. Me and Ron were at the gathering. We were blown away by how good JCW is. It is just a fun show. I would go to see this any day of the week. I've been to so many different shows, so many independents. This is one of the best wrestling shows I've ever been to, and it's consistently that good.
By the way, I want to give a little more love here. I'm going to tee you up here.
Wonderful, man.
Well, you should feel wonderful, Joe. You guys do a hell of a job, man. I had so much fun coming there, and I had so much fun watching what you guys do. I watch your stuff on YouTube all the time. It's just a fun show, and it's shot so different.
Yes.
I can't explain it. I'm not smart enough to use it. If I have the words to explain, you've got to check it out to see it, how it's shot. It's almost cinematic the way it's shot. It's really incredible to what you guys are doing.
The vibe and energy in the building, there's no lulls. It is a party atmosphere the entire time, which is why I was saying I think the ratio is more 50-50 for male and female, because I saw people there on dates, and respectfully, I don't know how many people take a date to an AEW or a WWE show. I'm sure it happens, but I'm saying it was that sort of vibe. It was a club party vibe, but there's a lot more to ICP and JCW than just that. I know you don't usually talk about this sort of thing, but the rumor and innuendo is, Jay, just in time for Thanksgiving, you guys are giving out 500 turkeys to families who need them. How cool is that?
That's right. We've given out turkeys quite a few different years, but this is the first time we did it at a JCW show. But we have done, I believe last year we did a Coach for Kids drive, and we've done canned food things, a lot of different canned food things where the only way you get in is you got to bring 5 canned foods. And one of the rules we have is you can't bring shitty canned foods. You got to bring like good stuff like ravioli. You can't bring like candy yams and stuff. Instead of the stuff nobody eats. You know what I'm saying? It's always in your cupboard. You got to bring the good food that's actually filling, you know. But yeah, we've done a lot of stuff like that. But I got to tell you guys. Oh, and that show, by the way, is tonight. The turkey show is actually tonight. But I got to tell you guys, I think I understand why JCW doesn't get is just now starting to get some attention in the internet wrestling world. I think I understand why the company hasn't gotten the type of attention it maybe should have all these years. And it dawned on me, believe it or not, when I was reading some comments, right? When JCW first started out, first of all, our intention was not to make a serious wrestling company. Our intention was to make a company for juggalos, which are the people that follow ICP's music. We even called the company Juggalo Championship Wrestling. And every match was a gimmick match. There was barbed wire. There was funny gimmicks. There was outrageous stuff going on. The commentary was me and Shaggy. And we were clowning the whole time, cracking jokes, making fun of everything. And that's what we did for like the first 2 years of the company. And so all the attention we got when we first started a wrestling company, that's what everybody saw. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So to shake that reputation for years after that, even after a couple of years, and we dropped the name Championship, we started getting serious. Okay, this is not shit. This is actual good wrestling we're putting on. Nobody wants to come work for a company called Championship Wrestling, and we don't want to call ourselves that no more. So we stopped that after a couple of years. But even then, we still only focused on entertaining juggalos. We never focused on taking it mainstream, so to speak, you know. But what happened was about 2 years ago, my buddy Vampiro went to go work for Billy Corgan's NWA. And when he went there, I never met Billy Corgan, and I thought that'd be cool to go rejoin with Vampiro like we did in WCW years ago, you know. So I called Vampiro and I said, "Hey man, can you get me in there?" And he said, "Let me try." So he called back and he said, "Sure, man, they want to have you." And I knew my value wasn't as much without Shaggy. And Shaggy doesn't want to do anything with wrestling because he's all banged up. He's super, super banged up. and he just kind of does his own podcast now, and he's not really very much involved in wrestling at all. I don't even know if he watches it as much as he used to. But I went alone to NWA, and when I got there, I was studying the production of it. I was studying everything, and I was shocked to see that their organization was really no bigger than ours. Now, here's these guys that are getting talked about and written about in the internet wrestling community all the time. And their production was no bigger than our own. You know what I mean? And for years, we've always done internet pay-per-views. We've toured the country from day one. JCW's always been a national company. It was never regional or anything like that. But because we always just focused on the Juggalo audience, that's why it's never appealed to anybody else. We've never attempted it. And it's even in the name, Juggalo Championship Wrestling. If you're not a Juggalo, you automatically feel like it's probably not for you. But the way I look at it is the word Juggalo is no different than, like, say the word renegade or something, or outlaw championship wrestling. You know, it's just like meaning, you know, you're a renegade or you're an outlaw. You know what I mean? So it is for everybody, but we never focused it like that. But after going to NWA, I saw that everything they're doing, we've been doing for years. Then after that, I went to MLW. I called MLW and I said, look, I know I'm not worth much without Shaggy, but I would love to come there and see the operation and work a night with you guys. And they said, sure. And I went and did an event called Battle Riot or something like that.
That's
it's
right.
like a 40-minute Royal Rumble thing. And I studied their operation. I saw the way they shot their pre-tapes. I saw the size of their production, everything the way they ran it. And I found it, in my opinion, it was better than NWA, but still the production wasn't necessarily bigger than anything we had been doing, you know? And then I went to GCW, and I stayed at GCW for a while. And I really got to know Brett Lauderdale, the owner of GCW, and he became a really close friend. And so did Saint at MLW. And I'm able to pick those guys' brains and talk to them and about how their fans are the wrestling community. You know, our fans have always been Juggalos, but their fans are the wrestling community, you know, and I want those fans. And so they've always been able to give me advice and everything. And after going to those places, and I even went to AAA, we did Triple Mania, and I went to Big Japan even and did a show for them, a weekend of shows for them. And after that, man, I really lit a fire in me. And I was like, man, we can do this. We can do this. We can do what everybody's doing and focus on, we can show, instead of making this for Juggalos only, we can show the world how good of a promotion us Juggalos can put on. You know what I mean? We can make this product for the world, make it for everybody. And yeah, we're Juggalos that are producing this product. So it's Juggalo Championship Wrestling, but it's for everybody. So we took out the outrageous commentary, it's inoffensive commentary and stuff like that. And we took out a lot of the gimmick style matches. Every match didn't have to have some funny gimmick to it or some kind of joke to it. We took a lot of that out, and we restructured everything to be more appealing to wrestling fans. And we tried to cover every base, okay? When you look at MLW or even GCW, a lot of their stuff is based on fantastic wrestling, like 5-star matches, like 25-minute long matches and stuff like that. And we try to give that every once in a while. We also try to give incredible storytelling and vignettes between matches. We also try to take death matches and use that rarely, but when it means something, when it really means something, we'll go there too. We try to give every type of fan what they want. It's just not only that. It's not only 5-star matches. It's not only death matches. It's a little bit of everything. And going to all those places and studying their fan base and studying their operation, I felt like it really gave me the knowledge for how to take our company and present it to the world. And that's what we've been doing now for the past 15 or 16 months. every Thursday at 7 o'clock on YouTube. We have a brand new episode of JCW Lunacy. And it's fun because, like, for example, the last 3 weeks, we've had 1,000 live viewers or 1,100 live viewers watching the episode as it airs. And I remember us trying to break 100 when we started, you know what I mean? We weren't even getting 100 live viewers, you know? So it's fun to see it grow, slowly to see it grow. But, man, we're working hard, and the guys are working super hard. And I'm proud of the show. I'm proud of everything we're doing. I just want a chance to entertain wrestling fans, to show them how good of a product this can be, to show them how good this is. And I know a lot of people hear Juggalo, and they think that's not for me. I'm not a Juggalo. I never liked ICP. That doesn't matter. Right. This is a wrestling program first. This is for wrestling fans first. And I don't want anything for free. I want a chance to, I just ask for everybody's attention for a minute to watch an episode or two, and maybe you will like it, because I want to earn fans. I want to earn their attention. And I'm confident we can get their attention if they give us a shot. You know what I'm saying, guys?
I know exactly what you're saying. I want to mention, too, the live experience is something else. And let me just quickly run through some of the towns you guys have been, because a lot of indies, they really stay in the same area. JCW is on tour. You guys have ran Detroit, Michigan, Riverside, California, Reno, Nevada, Garden City, Idaho, Jefferson, Indiana, Memphis, Tennessee, Fayetteville, Arkansas, Houston, Texas, South Padre Island, Texas, San Antonio, Texas, Dallas, Texas, Thornville, Ohio. I mean, New Jersey, on and on and on. This is not just a regional promotion. You guys have leveled up in a lot of different ways. And I think the way everybody has started to pay a little bit more attention to JCW is there was a lot of rumor and innuendo that Vince Russo may become the new booker of the NWA, when in fact, he is now an investor, I think, in JCW. How did that all come to be, Violet J?
Man, I'll be honest. I knew that JCW needed something that was going to bring attention to this company, more so than I believe any one wrestler could bring, because we've brought in some really big names, you know what I mean, and had them on the roster, you know, for a run several times. And I wanted some sort of hook that's going to make people give it a shot, and not just once. Not, you know, because I feel like if you can get their attention for 2 or 3 shows, you might get them invested into it, you know, invested into the entertainment you're providing. And so I thought about Vince Russo, you know, controversial as can be. You know what I mean? People either hate him or they love him. Everybody has an opinion on Vince Russo. And I thought, it's been so long since he's been writing for any wrestling company, people are going to want to see what he's doing. You know what I mean? Hands down, they're going to want to see what he's doing. As for my personal experience with Vince Russo, I met him when we were in the WWE. He was the guy we dealt with. And he was always cool to us. We never had really much of a relationship. It was just business. But he was always good to us. And we were there and we wanted them to play a commercial for our album, because we knew we weren't really there for the money. We weren't making very much money at all in the WWF or WWE. But all this attention we were getting was great, but many people assumed we weren't a real band. They didn't know we actually had albums in the stores. And that's what we wanted. So we asked them, could they run a 30-second commercial on Raw just once? So everybody will see the commercial and see it say, CDs available at FYE or available at Coconuts. And then they would say, wow, that's an actual real rap group. That's cool. You know, that's all we wanted, because a lot of people were just assuming we were part of a storyline or something, and we weren't actually rappers, you know. And we were taking time off our tour to come and do Raw every Monday. So we wanted people to know we had product, you know, in the stores. So we kept asking Vince Russo to get it aired. And I genuinely think he was trying to get them to do it, but it never aired. And so week after week after week, they would say, next week, for sure it's going to air, for sure it's going to air. And we kept doing that. And finally, we just left because it wasn't airing, and we felt like they were just leading us around, you know. And we could have been making much more doing what on tour back then. So we left WWE. Now, when we got the bug again and we wanted to get back in the ring, we decided to go to WCW. So we went there and we had a great run. And then we left again. And then when we decided to go back to WCW, by then Vince Russo had just come in to WCW. And we thought, man, he's going to be like, fuck those guys. They walked out on us on WWE. But I think he knew we had a reason to be upset. You know what I mean? Because he knew, he kept saying they're going to run the commercial every week. They're going to say they're going to run it next week for sure. And they never did. So I was surprised when he accepted us back into WCW. And now we're basically working for Russo again, but only in WCW. And again, there we weren't like hanging out at the bar after the show or anything, but we got along and everything was cool, But honestly, I'll keep it honest, you guys, I didn't think we'd ever be able to get Vince Russo. But when I go for something like that, I like to try for the biggest guys first. I just thought, why not try? Worst that can happen is he'll say no, or he'll be way out of our price range or something like that. I don't really know what he would cost or if he would even be interested in coming to a small independent trying to get noticed, But I hit him up and we started communicating. At first, he's like, I'm retired. I don't do this no more, And I'm like, well, watch the show. Please watch the show, Watch this episode. And he genuinely started to get interest. So then when he really started getting interest, we were in the middle of a storyline of JCW versus GCW. And that was a year-long storyline that ended at the Gathering. And John, that's what you and Ron came to. Remember in the 2-day war, it was called.
Yeah.
And it was JCW versus GCW.
Yeah.
So we were in the middle of that storyline. So we couldn't bring Vince in then because it would have been the bad timing. We're too focused on this main storyline taking up all our TV. So we told him, all right, well, now we got to wait for this end to end, which was like 4 more months. You know what I'm saying? So when that 4 months ended, we ended up calling him back. And I didn't, I thought he might have changed his mind, but he was right there. He's ready to go, and we were like, hell yeah. So then he started writing the shows. And man, I've never given up writing. I always write the shows. You know what I mean? And at first, seeing what he wrote just looked crazy to me. And I was like, no way. That's not going to work. No, this is a disaster. It's not going to work, But then when I really concentrated on it, I was like, this ain't bad. It's just not what I would have done. But it's not bad. It's still really entertaining. And I wondered why when I read it, I would look at the guys and be like, ain't that terrible? And they'd be looking at me like, no, that's actually kind of good, And I realized it just was me having a hard time looking at something that wasn't my own, because that's all I've done for 26 years is write the storylines, So I started looking at it from another person's perspective, and I realized it was really good what he was writing. And in the ideas he has that are crazy, let's take, for example, the Judy Bagwell on a pole. You know what I'm saying? That's something I would have done. I'll admit it. JCW has always done outrageous, crazy shit like that. You know what I mean? So when he has a far out idea, it may sound ridiculous, but we do a lot of far out crazy shit. We got a wrestler called Cocaine.
Yes, such a funny.
He could be my favorite wrestler in the world. When I first saw it, I literally, Joe, I'd come to the show in Detroit on Devil's Night, October 30th, I believe it was. First time I came in with you. And when I saw Cocaine, I literally called Ron Simmons from the dressing room and go, you've got to see this. This is crazy. It was awesome. When he pulled out the gimmick and he pours it all over his face, the crowd goes wild. It's absolutely insane.
He's all revived and everything.
Oh,
yeah, so some of his outrageous ideas fit right in, with us, And there would be things I would say, no, I don't want to do that. And he was always super cool about it. He'd be like, okay, do you have something else you want to do, or you want me to just keep writing, And I would either tell him what I got in mind or just have him keep writing. So every time I saw something I really didn't like, I would say, no, I don't want to do that. Usually I'd have a reason why. I'd say that doesn't really work because of this or this, And he was just really easy to deal with. But there were a couple of times when it's like the bottom fell out, There's a couple of times when it just got too different for me. and everything fell apart, you know. But then a couple days later, we start talking again, and I think it was him worried because he was really, really worried about coming in. He's been through a lot, and he's had a lot of people disrespect him, you know, a lot of young wrestlers telling him, well, what do you know about anything, you know, and shit like that. When he's had bad experiences, and I think he thought we were going to be disrespectful or hard to deal with, and we, of course, were worried about him. What's he going to be like? You know, is he going to come here pushing us around? I'm calling the shots, you know. So we both had cold feet, and things kind of fell apart maybe two or three times before he got here. But once we had that first show together, once he came out to the actual show, man, it just flowed as smooth as possible. Flawless. We shot those pre-tapes like it was like we've been doing it forever together. Everything went so smooth. Once we did it in person and there was no communication problems or reading texts wrong or reading emails wrong or anything like that, once we were in person able to communicate, everything just was perfect, man. I really don't know how else to explain it. Everything went really good. And we both got totally rejuvenated and fired up about this because we realized we can do this for real. You know, like this is a good match right here. This is a good thing we're doing right here. There's no problems. There's no bumps in the road. This is cool. We get along. We think the same on a lot. And most importantly, he's okay to rewrite something. And I'm okay to go with something that I wouldn't normally have ever written. You know what I mean? And because of that, once we both kind of surrendered that to each other, things got really smooth, man. And it's been smooth ever since, you know. And now we're really excited about everything. We don't even like taking these breaks because we just want to get together and show the world what we can do. We love the roster. We really love the roster we have right now. And we see potential in everybody. And it's exciting. It's a really exciting time. And just like I thought he would bring attention, he's bringing attention. Our viewership went up 3 times. Our live feed, like the amount of people watching the live show when we air on Thursdays at 7:00, it went up 3 or 4 times what it was. And we're doing really good. And I knew that would happen because he's the kind of guy, love him or hate him, you want to see what he's doing. You know, yep. It reminds me a lot of Dave Meltzer, okay? People don't like Dave Meltzer. And a lot of times I'll see on all these YouTube channels I'm watching, the wrestling YouTube channels and stuff, they'll bring up Dave Meltzer, they'll talk a whole gang of shit, and then they'll read what he wrote. You know what I mean? And that's the bottom line. They're still reading it, you know? So that's what I mean. Like they might love or hate Vince Russo, but at the bottom of the line, they're going to want to watch it just to see if he's going to fuck up or to see what's going to happen. He makes you want to watch it, whether it's to bury him or to you're a genuine fan of him. I just knew he would be the kind of guy that would bring eyes to the product. And that's really the biggest problem we were having was getting people to trust the product and give it a shot. And when Vince Russo came in, I feel like it helped make people understand that we're serious about this for wrestling fans, you know. And I know Vince says some crazy shit. Like he says a lot of things like, I don't want to misquote him, so I'm not speaking word for word verbatim of what he said, but he makes insinuations like he doesn't like wrestling. He writes TV shows and everything. But I know that man loves wrestling just like we do. You know what I mean? I think he says things a certain way to irk people or to get people riled up or something. Like that's what he likes to do. But that man loves pro wrestling. You know what I mean? And he says things that are kind of outrageous sometimes. Like I heard him one time say that David Flair was a phenomenal talent in wrestling. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying he's not a good talent, but I don't think he would be considered phenomenal either. You know what I mean? But I think he says things that are going to be controversial. You know what I'm saying? Because he knows they're going to be controversial. And that's just my opinion. But getting to know him, I really genuinely like the guy, you know, and I do find him very, very easy to work with. And the more I'm around him, the more I understand. I think I understand why he says things and what he means by them. You know what I mean? Because I believe he is a wrestling fan at the end of the day. You know, he has to be to be involved as much as he's been. You know what I mean?
Hey, Violent J, you know, I understand so much better now of why you did this. You know, you guys needed eyeballs, and you've had incredible, legendary Hall of Fame wrestlers on there, and you didn't get the eyeballs that you deserved. And, you know, there's only a couple guys out there, and Vince Russo is one of them, that would bring eyeballs to what you're doing more so than bringing in, you know, a legendary wrestler. And I get it. And I've watched your shows since Russo's been there. Look, I love what you guys have been doing. I love what you guys have done for years. But I'm really happy for you guys that you've got the eyeballs now on a show that I think is a terrific show that more people need to be watching. I think it's a fantastic move for you. I'm very happy for you.
Thank you, brother. Thank you. You know, to get somebody to come in for a run like that in the role that he's doing, it would obviously mean he sees potential in the company because he could embarrass himself. You know what I mean?
That's right. There's a huge downside. There's a huge downside to him coming in. I mean, he's really putting everything on the middle of the table and rolling the dice. You know, so I understand from his perspective of being hesitant as well.
Yeah. You know, you can book a wrestler and the wrestler could come in and basically not really even pay attention to the rest of the show. He just goes out and does his thing, you know. But the role Vince Russo is in, he has to study the whole program to give it the okay to actually want to write this stuff. He has to study everything about it, you know, and not just his match and where he fits in, you know. So by him saying, yes, I'll do this, I felt like it involves a lot more. Okay, he trusts this product, you know, to put his name on it. You know, he trusts that he can, and to hear him do the interview since he came, where he's talking about we're going to come up, this is going to be a better show than the Attitude Era and all that. Like, I love that shit. I love it. I love hearing him say that because it shows he believes in this and he's putting his name on the line and everything. And it's just it's a bigger investment than bringing somebody in as a wrestler for a one-time thing, you know. The whole thing of bringing somebody in as a general manager or something like that, or a commissioner or something, that's like a more investing role. And that is like saying nobody's going to take that unless they genuinely really like the company. You know what I'm saying? To be involved in that kind of way is asking a lot more than to just come work a match. You get what I'm saying?
Totally get it. And I get that everybody can watch this for free each and every Thursday. It's on YouTube, and this is global. So if you're listening in America, it's not like, well, it's on TBS, but in the UK, well, it airs a few days later. No, you can watch it at the exact same time worldwide for free on YouTube. It doesn't get any better than that, does it, John?
Absolutely not. It's you got to check it out. I'm telling you, it's impossible to explain. It's like a cinematic show almost. It's shot in a different way of any wrestling show I've ever seen. And it somehow makes perfect sense. You talk about the cocaine character. There's some great characters. There's also some great wrestlers. You know, Ricky Morton's kid, Kerry, is a fantastic talent. Kerry's there. You got so much great talent and you got a great show. It's fun to watch. You know, you can put great wrestlers, and I've seen this a lot of places, in bad shows, and they might have a decent match, but the show itself is, you know, just not something that lends itself to want to be repetitive watching. This does. This will hook you in. I urge everybody to check this thing out at 7:00 every Thursday on YouTube, anywhere around the world.
Check it out. JCW Lunacy. Give us some final words as we throw to break here, Violent J.
I think we like being on YouTube because everybody has access to it. You know, it's not like an app where you have to own the app or whatever, or you know, it's not even a channel that you have to, you know, it's everybody has YouTube. You know what I mean? Right on their phone, and I like that. And we don't really have plans. Maybe if somebody called, some network called or something and offered us some kind of big deal or something, we might take it. But we're happy being on YouTube. And you guys, my final words are that I love you guys both. You know that. I tell you guys all the time. I consider both you guys an actual friend, you know, and wrestling can be funny about that. But both you guys are actual friends of mine. And I thank you for this time, man. I love you guys. And I appreciate everybody listening, hearing this out, man. And I'm just happy, man. You guys said some wonderful things about the show. And I'm just smiling like hell over here, man. I love you guys. Thank you very much, man.
We love you, and we know that our listeners will love JCW Lunacy. Check it out Thursday for free on YouTube. These are good guys. You heard him say we're recording on a Saturday night or a Saturday morning. Later tonight, 500 families are walking with a turkey just in time for Thanksgiving. Show some love to ICP and JCW, and we'll be right back after these words.
Woo woo.
JCW Lunacy. New episodes every Thursday night at 7 p.m. on YouTube. For over 25 years, JCW has delivered the very best in pro wrestling entertainment, bringing fans deep storytelling drama, gut-busting comedy, and unbelievable in-ring action. From wild characters to unforgettable rivalries, don't miss a single moment. Tune in every Thursday night at 7 p.m. on YouTube. JCW Lunacy.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. It's time to count down the top 5. Brought to you by SaveWithConrad.com.
So here we are, man. I love doing these with you every week. And this week, since you're the ultimate heel, so much so that when you just have a match against one of the Highlanders, they think, God damn that JBL. We're going to list JBL's top 5 bad guys in the history of wrestling. Let's start right now at number 5. Probably no surprise. You're talking about your old pal, Fit Finlay. I got to hear, why does Finlay come in at number 5 on your list?
I want to tell you, I grokked. I used to Google, but now you grok things. I grokked, the top heels and had Finlay, and all it had was about how he was a heel in WCW and all this stuff. And, Grok knows all this stuff, but Grok doesn't know that this man was a freaking different level in Europe. If you didn't see Finlay in Europe, Conrad, I went over to Europe, and I got there hired because Larry Cameron had died in the ring the year before in Bremen, and they got a whole new American crew in. And Otto Vance wanted to see what he had, so he took us to Seeboden, which is a resort town, and we spent the weekend there wrestling different matches and things like that. He wanted to see what he had with the new American crew. He knew what he had with the Europeans. He put Finlay and St. Clair out there, and until I saw Shawn and Taker at WrestleMania 25. I've never seen a match that compared to it. It was that freaking good. And I just remember sitting there thinking, I can't do this. I can't wrestle. They did it on purpose. They did it on purpose because they wanted to show the Americans how good they freaking were. And they did. They impressed the living hell out of me. Finlay was that good. I watched Finlay every night. And you'd work, say, in Hanover, 56 straight nights. You'd work 8 straight weeks, every single night. Now, fans would come. Look at that haircut. That haircut alone's got heat with me. Oh, my God. I love Fit. I always called him Dave. And you'd have 56 straight nights. Guys would buy tickets. Talk about fans would buy tickets, and they'd sit there in the crowd. So you had the same fans for 56 straight nights. Finlay would go out there every night and just tear the place down. I'd never seen anybody like him. I mean, he could be number 1 on this list. Fit was beyond belief in Europe. Now, he was great in WCW. He was great in WWE. He got hurt, in that table match in WCW, so he wasn't quite the same guy later when he came to WWE. Plus, he was older. I was there in 94 when he had his 20th anniversary. He had just gotten in. And I remember talking to people in England when Fit came along and he first started having with Marty Jones and all those different matches. Everybody in the world knew, you got to see this kid out of Northern Ireland. He was a kid then. He was that freaking good, and he could easily be number 1 on this list.
Coming in at number 4 on JBL's list of the top 5 heels, Rowdy Roddy Piper, a favorite of Bruce's as well. It's unusual to see Piper on a list like this. Normally, it feels like he's always celebrated as a babyface, but if you go back to the beginning of Hulkamania, I don't know that Hulkamania would have been as hot if he didn't have a great foil. Who better than Rowdy Roddy Piper? Why does he come in at number 4 for you?
Yeah, when the Briscoes sold Georgia Championship Wrestling, they sold it because Piper got signed to WWE. They knew when Piper got signed that they had lost the battle with Vince. That's what they knew was the turning point. It wasn't WrestleMania. It was that man right there, Hot Rod Roddy Piper. He was that freaking good. When he was just still a teenager out in Hollywood, out with Chavo Guerrero when he did the donkey angle, when he brought out the donkey and he said, "This was Gory Guerrero. I'm going to talk to your family," and damn near caused a riot. He, from that point forward, for the next couple of decades, bro, he just got nothing but heat. Roddy sold out places everywhere he was. Roddy was absolutely different level. Roddy kind of took me under his wing. He did it for a lot of guys. He told me so many things that I remember this day, like you can't out Hulk the Hulk. He'd always tell me, whatever the top guy's doing, do something different. If they're flipping everybody off, you don't flip anybody off. Like today, you see so many people flipping people off. I would never do that now because everybody does it. When Steve did it, it was only one. Roddy would say, if everybody's smiling, if the top guy's smiling, frown. If the top guy's frowning, smile. Figure out. And he goes, and when you become the top guy, he'd always tell me, when you see everybody try to copy you, change, because you'll be months ahead of them. Roddy was just a genius as far as the wrestling business. Roddy was great at everything he did, but he was a tremendous heel.
I loved his stuff. I think when you go back and you look at the hype around WrestleMania, that's probably peak heel stuff for anybody in any era. I don't know that WrestleMania would have been nearly as successful without him, but we always talk about his promos, how crazy and off the wall and effective they were. But one of the things I liked about Piper, and I know I'm probably in the minority, is he didn't wrestle like a traditional wrestler. He wanted you to believe that he was in a fight, lots of punches, lots of kicks. It was not very scientific. It felt like the bell rang and now we're going to start brawling, and just that wild fury. I mean, he was like a little human tornado in there. As a fan, I thought, hey, that's believable.
Yeah, Roddy was a tough guy. He proved that with Mr. T. He took it to Mr. T a couple times, but he was also great. He was also a very good wrestler. A very good wrestler. He chose not to, because he knew that not being a wrestler was what he needed to be as a heel. And so he knew that he needed to be a heel. He needed to punch, kick. He needs to do things. It's like the old thing. I remember, I got this all from Roddy. I remember I was wrestling some guys that weren't very good wrestlers. I would never out wrestle them. I'd never out punch them. I'd always figure out a way for them to beat me. And then if I was going to go over, I was going to find a way for them to slip on a banana peel. That all came from Roddy. I mean, Roddy knew how to be a heel.
Let's take a look at number 3 on JBL's list of the top 5 biggest heels, baddest heels, the Sheik. Now, I don't think we're talking about the Iron Sheik. We're talking about the one from Detroit. Chat me up, John.
The first hardcore guy. I mean, he's the one that created all of this. Talk about stuff with Onita, talk about stuff with ECW. That man right there drew a ton of money, and he was one of the first to go territory to territory. Now, the guy we'll mention number 1 was the first. Actually, he wasn't the first. The guy we mentioned number 2 was going to be the first. I don't want to go on crazy here, but the Sheik, Ed Farhat, that guy, according to tax returns, something like $600,000, I think it was, he made in the early 70s, and that's what he reported. I mean, the stuff he did with Ricky Dozan, I mean, it was just insane. I mean, people thought that this guy was going to kill people. I mean, it was crazy what the Sheik did. And he drew money every single place he was.
I do want to ask, do you think that could ever work today? Like this monster heel that's really undefeated for as long as he was. Like, it feels like these days, maybe the closest we could have gotten to something like that was Roman Reigns. Totally different circumstance and situation, because one's a promoter and one's quote unquote just a performer. But still, like, that longevity on top as a heel, that's unusual in wrestling.
It's absolutely, yeah. He had 170 matches or something. I can't remember the total, but I mean, he had this incredible match total. And I finally lost to Andre there in Detroit, where he was the booker. Funny how the booker ends up undefeated, but yeah, I think it could happen today. It would take a lot of work. It would take the right person. It'd be tough. I mean, but again, Conrad, it didn't happen back then. People say, well, we'd love to be able to do that now. You couldn't do it back then. You didn't have guys that were undefeated like that back then. You had one. You had one guy who could do that back then, and that was the Sheik. Bob Orton Sr. was a great heel in the 70s also. But the Sheik, man, he was just he was unreal. He was the first hardcore guy. He was the first one to come out with all this craziness, and live the gimmick. And so could it happen today? Yeah, it could. Is it likely to happen? No, but it wasn't likely to happen then either.
How much of a honorable mention do you think Ernie Roth, the future Grand Wizard,
Ooh.
would get as the manager of the Sheik? Because that was a big part of the presentation too, wasn't it?
100%. Ernie Roth was a great manager. I heard Vince talk about him so much on the plane. Vince really liked the Grand Wizard. He really thought the world of him, and he was a terrific manager. Kind of lost in the annals of history, a little bit, the Grand Wizard. But Ernie was such an important part of the Sheik, and he got so much heat that one of the greatest managers of all time.
Let me ask, what do you think Vince liked so much about Ernie? What was it about his presentation that really resonated with Vince? What caught Vince's eye compared to, say, every other manager?
The fact that he just wanted to get heat, and very few guys actually wanted to do that. All these guys that I mentioned on here, and I chose them carefully, are guys who wanted to get heat. They're not guys who wanted to get over. They're one of the guys who wanted to get heat, where you wanted people to try to kill you. Ernie Roth was like that. And you could hear the respect in Vince's voice when he would talk about him, because Ernie just wanted to go out there and get heat, because he knew that heat would translate to the babyface over there. And Vince had a lot of respect for that. And Conrad, there aren't many people that really want to do that. Every generation only has one or two guys who really want to be heels. And Ernie Roth was one of those guys. Sheik was certainly one of those guys.
Let's do number 2 on JBL's list of the top 5 biggest heels. I'll admit, I'm going to learn something here. Am I saying it right? Yusuf Ismail, the Terrible Turk?
Oh, my God. This guy was maybe the greatest heel of all time. There's nothing like this guy. Yusuf Ismail was, I can't think of the guy's name. Alito was the guy he beat in Turkey, 20-year champion, undefeated. And he beat him. And this guy was a living work, man. He was the Terrible Turk. He was the first great heel. I mean, look at this guy. He was a freaking monster. He's 6'2", somewhere between 240 and 300. I know that's a wide range, but nobody knows how much he weighed, because there's so much about him that was kabuki-ish, as we would say. This was kind of there at the time in Turkey when you had Lawrence of Arabia, who came right after him and held the stuff in the desert. He claimed he was part of the royal bodyguards or something. Nobody knows if it's true. There was even a talk that he was a dock worker off the Paris docks. It wasn't even Turkey. Nobody knows for sure. But when he came over to America, he was beating guys in 5 seconds, 15 seconds, 20 seconds, which didn't happen back then. You'd have guys getting beaten 2 and 3 hours, and he was beating guys. He would rip guys' nostrils, and he was just a nasty guy. And that was all work, or at least most of it was a work. But he got heat like you wouldn't believe. He was the first xenophobic heel. He was the first guy that was the Terrible Turk, that was the foreigner that would come in and beat up your guys. He caused riots everywhere he went. He drew massive crowds. He was the first great heel. Every heel that has come along has been a descendant of Yusuf Ismail. When he died, he was going back to somewhere to Europe. He wanted to open up a Turkish coffee shop. He had all his money, and he only got paid in gold, by the way, because he didn't trust anybody. That led also to his whole image. The boat sank up somewhere near Nova Scotia or somewhere, and the rumor was that he threw women and children overboard trying to make it to the lifeboat, which was not true. And also he drowned because he wouldn't leave his gold belt alone. So even when he died, he was still, the promoters were giving over his heel image. Maybe the greatest heel of all time, but everything that we have in wrestling as heels is the descendant of Yusuf Ismail.
Process what we're talking about here on Something to Wrestle, thanks to John too. He made his debut in 1894 here in America. In 1898 is when his boat crashes, along with like 561 other people. He's lost at sea and drowns. And John's right. There's 2 versions of this story. One where he's throwing women and children over to get life rafts, and another where he's like, hey, I'm out of here. I'm going to fend for myself. But he had his money belt on him, and that's where he kept all of his gold coins. He had somewhere between $8,000 and $10,000 in gold coins on his person. And imagine how much money that was in the freaking 1800s. And so supposedly not wanting to let go of the money, his ass sank to the bottom of the ocean. This is a crazy ass story, John.
It's a crazy story. And the promoters literally, the guy died, and the promoters are still putting him over as a heel. So $8,000 to $10,000 is about $250,000 that he had in his gold belt. But he sank because he had so much gold around him that he wouldn't let go of his gold after throwing all the women out anyway. And he sank to the bottom of the ocean because he wouldn't let his gold go. Was according to what happened to the story. Here's a poor guy. He dies on his way back to make a Turkish coffee shop and retire. And they're still making him out to be this great heel.
And he's only like 41 when he passes away. He's still a young man. His last match was against Ed Strangler Lewis. He gets the big win there. And I don't know, dude. We've learned a lot today. I did not expect to see that on your list. I can't wait to see what's number one.
Hey, and the thing about it is these guys like Ed Strangler Lewis, they put him over and who knows what's a work and what wasn't, and most of it I'm sure is a work. But they put him over like he was God, man. Yeah. They said, never seen anybody so violent, never seen anybody so rough, so tough. When he beat guys, he not only beat them, he beat them fast. And the guys would put him over in the press afterwards going, this guy's unbeatable. Man, the Terrible Turk is just a different level. He is a superhuman. They made him into being the greatest character in wrestling around. He drew huge crowds.
That's unbelievable what we're learning here today. Let's see. I can't wait to see who's number one on JBL's list of the top 5 baddest heels of all time. Coming in at number 1, Gorgeous George. Okay, I got to hear about this one, John.
They say he sold so many TV sets, they called him Georgie sets. He said he sold more TV sets than Milton Berle. Gorgeous George was the greatest heel of all time. I don't think there's any doubt about it. George Wagner from Beaumont, Texas, became Gorgeous George. He became this character. Lou Thez loved this guy because this guy was a legit badass. He's an actual real wrestler. He was a shooter. He was a super tough guy. But he came up with this character. He was just a journeyman, and he came up with this character. He became the biggest draw in wrestling. And when TVs were first being made, it was easy for 2 things. It was easy for a talk show because all you had was a desk and you had a guest there, and it was easy for wrestling because you could set a hard cam up and you knew where the wrestling was going to be. It wasn't going to be all over the place. It was going to be pretty much in a confined area. So George was made for television. He was the anti-Jim Londos is what he was. Londos was such a big character. Following Jim Londos, you had Gorgeous George, who was a complete departure from Jim Londos. And that's why Gorgeous George to me became, in my opinion, the greatest heel of all time. And there's nobody close. You talk about, changing the world. James Brown talked about how he got so much influence from Gorgeous George. Muhammad Ali, to his credit, went to see Gorgeous George and Freddie Blassie in the Vegas Convention Center. And George told him, said, everybody knows you, but nobody cares about you. You got to tell people you're pretty. You got to tell people you're good looking. He gave Muhammad Ali his entire shtick. It all came from Gorgeous George. And Angelo Dundee had verified that meeting that he had in that dressing room. Ali had sold out maybe 800 tickets in the convention center. George and Blassie had sold 15,000. And Ali couldn't believe when he saw Gorgeous George, the presence that he had. That's where Ali got his whole shtick from. Gorgeous George changed culture. Gorgeous George changed television. Gorgeous George, to me, I don't think there's any doubt, greatest heel of all time.
I wanted to ask you, and I'm not trying to get you on your soapbox. I like doing that sometimes with Eric. But Dave Meltzer at times has indicated that he doesn't think Gorgeous George had the impact that maybe some of his biggest supporters say he did. Why do you think that is? I know that there are critics out there who say that, he had borrowed some of this act from regional performers, but we certainly know that even guys like Muhammad Ali would cite Gorgeous George as the inspiration for their smack talk and their promo that sold so many fights. Like Muhammad Ali took boxing to another level. He became a pop culture icon and one of the most famous people on the globe. And he would credit Gorgeous George with a lot of that. Why do you think Meltzer goes the other way? What is the other side of the argument? Because I don't know it for Gorgeous George.
Yeah, and he had a few things that Ali wouldn't do. So he told Ali, why don't you have dye your hair blue and wear a blue robe with it and stuff. So he told Ali a few things Ali didn't do. But for the most part, Ali took what he said, and this was George just talking off the top of his head. He knew who Muhammad Ali was. Muhammad Ali was going to be the same building that Gorgeous George was a few days later, had sold a mere fraction of the tickets that Freddie Blassie and George had sold. And he gave Ali his entire shtick. And Ali, to his credit, always gave credit to Gorgeous George, and so did Angelo Dundee. And I don't know where Meltzer's coming from with this. And I don't know why he would think that he's not – I don't know where Meltzer would put him. Say if you had a top 5 of Dave Meltzer's greatest heels, I don't know where Meltzer would put George if he'd leave him off the top 5 completely, or if he'd just not put him number 1. I don't know how you don't make George the greatest heel of all time. I've looked, John Capua has written an incredible book about Gorgeous George, and it's just fascinating to listen to all the stuff that George did. I don't know how you don't make him the greatest heel of all time. What is it? What does Meltzer say that in his defense by saying that he's not?
Well, I'm not really sure, but I know that for whatever reason, he's never really thought that guys like Big Daddy or Gorgeous George or even Sting were as influential as a lot of fans did. But let's get to your honorable mentions, because this is your list, by God. You're the damn wrestling guy, not Dave Meltzer. Your honorable mentions for the top 5 baddest heels list include Abdullah the Butcher.
Yep.
What keeps him from being in the top 5? Too similar to the Sheik? That hurts him a little bit?
Yeah, I think so. And I debated whether Abdullah would be in the top 5. I think he should be. And I think you can replace any guy in the top 5 with Abdullah. And I don't think anybody, at least I would not have an objection to it. Abdullah was terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. When he'd show up to arenas, he was like the Sheik in so many ways. He'd travel around, he would go, few guys have done that. Few guys have been able to travel around and become that name that, would never stay in one place very long, and didn't mind working for a million different people. Abdullah was one of those guys, but Abdullah was absolutely terrifying when he would come into an arena.
I do want to ask you about another honorable mention, Classy Freddie Blassie. I'll admit I knew his work as a manager more than I did as an in-ring performer, but I loved his book and the idea of him using a file on his teeth. There you see, over in Japan. Allegedly, it gave people heart attacks in Japan. Like, it feels like Freddie Blassie could have been a shoe-in your top 5 too.
100%. Yeah. He would bite people's, heads. Of course, they're juicing. I get all that, but the fault was that he's biting people's heads open. I mean, it was crazy. He was the one, Ricky Dozan, by the way, not whoever I said earlier, but it was crazy what he would do. And Freddie got heat like you wouldn't believe. I remember when I got to meet Freddie. It was so cool to see him. Some guys just have this aura about him. You're like, I'm meeting somebody who's a freaking legend. Bullet Bob Armstrong was like that. He had such presence about him. It's kind of cool just to meet him, Freddie Blassie was certainly like that.
Another honorable mention on your list that I'll admit caught me by surprise. Sergeant Slaughter makes the list? What's
100%. Now I'm talking about the Iraqi sympathizer, Sergeant Slaughter, not the Sergeant Slaughter. Sergeant Slaughter was a babyface for the most part of his career. He had the G.I. Joe gimmick, and he had G.I. Joe dolls and all that stuff, and he's certainly still a babyface to this day. But the Iraqi sympathizer, man, he had heat. It was unbelievable. Very few guys would have done that, and very few guys would have been able to pull that off. Sarge pulled that off. I mean, they had to have extra security for Sarge. They were worried about him getting killed. I mean, Sarge was one hell of a heel. Now, it wasn't a long run, but it was a very good run. I mean, Sarge had an incredible run as a heel.
Another on your list is Buddy Rogers. So Buddy Rogers, the original, the OG Nature Boy, makes the list. Why is Buddy on this honorable mention list, John?
He makes it for just off one promo alone. Pat O'Connor at the end of it there in Chicago when he says, to a finer guy, it couldn't happen. People just didn't say that back then. Buddy Rogers was a hell of a heel. You know, I talked to Gerald Briscoe about it, who, by the way, if you're out there, be sure and wish him a happy Columbus Day today. And he had a tag match with Buddy Rogers, and Joe Louis was the special referee. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. That's one of the greatest things I ever heard. Buddy Rogers just had a presence about him. You know, he was the right guy to come along. He was the right guy to put over Bruno. You know, not sure if he wanted to or not, but not sure exactly what happened with all that. Buddy Rogers was a hell of a heel. You know, he was the original Nature Boy, and he was one of the ones, he was kind of a Gorgeous George type, very similar, a little bit different, you know, more of an arrogant type than, you know, the effeminate type that George was. But he did a fantastic job of it. To me, I don't think you could argue if you put him in the top 5.
Well, that's going to do it for JBL's top 5 baddest heels. We want to hear from you. Who are your top 5 baddest heels? Let us know in the comments. We want to hear from you, and we will be highlighting some of those in the coming weeks. Let us know who your top 5 heels are. SaveWithConrad.com.
My name's Daryl. Came from Massachusetts, and I moved to Wisconsin. And there's a lot of people that might be asking, why go with Conrad? Why go with Supreme Lending? And let me tell you something, brother. I think about the credentials, the tag team partner that I'd be working with. First of all, we got the Podfather himself, Conrad. How can you go wrong with that? And then also go on to SaveWithEric.com, which, you know, who else could have kicked Vince's ass for 83 consecutive weeks? You can't beat that duo right there. But they did bring a secret weapon, and I didn't realize this because this was not advertised. I worked closely with Larry the Axe Thompson. And let me tell you, with all the stress with moving across the country with a large family that I have, it was reassuring to know that I had the enforcer at my back, handling questions from the other side of sellers, the other side with trying to find the right prices. He took care of all that. All I had to do was keep my eye on the prize and make it there to Wisconsin. They were absolutely fantastic. They checked in on me, especially Francis, very patient with me. I don't go through this process all the time, so I trusted the experts. I was able to call them. They called me if they had questions, and it felt like it was a personal arrangement. There was even a point in which, from the seller side, they wanted something else that wasn't part of the norm. Francis straight up told me, hey, we're loyal to you. We'll do whatever you want to do, and we'll make sure that you guys are taken care of. They came through. I made it to the dream. I'm the champion of my own destiny here. They were able to help pave the way for me and my family. I couldn't be more happy with the results. I went from having less than an acre to now 20 acres worth of land. They made that dream a reality. I'm Daryl, and I'm living in Friendship, Wisconsin, in my dream home, thanks to SaveWithConrad.com.
NMLS number 2129, Equal Housing Lender. SaveWithConrad.com.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. It's time to count down the top 5. Brought to you by SaveWithConrad.com.
All right, John, now it's time for one of our favorite parts of the show. We're going to talk about your top 5. And today our top 5 are the top 5 biggest fumbles in WCW. That's interesting to think about. You know, what were the biggest WCW fumbles? And I think a lot of this was born out of the anniversary that we just recently passed, which was the 30-year anniversary of Steve Austin being released from his WCW contract.
Right.
We know when that happened, he jumped to the WWF, and well, his life and wrestling fans' lives changed a little bit. So I wanted to start with your top 5. Who were the biggest talents that slipped through WCW's fingers? Who were the top 5 biggest WCW fumbles?
Number 5.
All right, John, let's hear it. Coming in at number 5, you've got X-Pac on the list. Why is he number 5?
What an incredible star. I mean, what an absolute star. He was part of the NWO. He gets there, and then he's part of DX. I mean, this, you know, I'm not sure that X-Pac, who gets a ton of credit, gets enough credit. He deserves a ton more. So when Shawn Michaels gets hurt and Shawn Michaels has to take a hiatus from the wrestling business, we don't know if he's ever coming back. We don't know what's going to happen with DX, this incredible faction that everybody loves, that's starting to draw ratings. All of a sudden, X-Pac shows up, and when he does, the thing takes off. I mean, just like it did with NWO. I mean, X-Pac is an unbelievably talented guy. But the fact that WCW let him go and let him come to us in the middle of a war, knowing he was friends with Hunter, that's a huge mistake. Eric did a lot of great things. This was a big mistake.
I do want to ask, if you talk to Eric about this situation, he says that, well, I guess we should start with what other people say. Other people would say, oh, they're trying to fire Sean Waltman to send a message to Scott Hall and Kevin Nash. The narrative is out there that those guys had gotten out of hand and they needed to be reined in, or whatever the verb is. And then we hear from Eric that wasn't exactly the case, but he had some disciplinary issues. Maybe he had some demons or whatever you want to call it. And he felt like he had to draw a line somewhere, not necessarily to say make an example of, but he stopped just short of saying that. Do you still, with that context, do you still think it's a fumble, or was there a way to remedy it? And Eric just threw his hands up, at least in your opinion. And neither you nor I were there.
Absolutely. And I don't know if there's a way to remedy it or not. Eric's a very smart guy, and Eric built that entire company from, good grief, they're losing tens of millions of dollars and they're making hundreds of millions of dollars. He did an incredible job. We're picking about the few things that he did that I thought were a mistake. What I thought was a mistake was figuring out how to deal with it in a way where you don't lose him, because he was worth it to pay him not to go to WWE. Because it was a huge deal when he went down there. I mean, you got to look at what happened with Shawn Michaels going out and DX. Now you don't know where they're going to be. They're a little bit rudderless. Triple H steps in. I don't think anybody knew how good he was going to be when he stepped in. But all of a sudden you bring in X-Pac. People don't realize how important that was before that to get into D-Generation X. And so I think what Eric should have done, and hindsight's always 20/20. We're picking apart something, a guy that had the biggest corporate turnaround in history. It's certainly in the wrestling business. I thought he should have just kept him, figured out a way to deal with whatever he's dealing with. Don't lose him. Don't let him go to the competition.
He's obviously had one hell of a career, but I often wonder what kind of a career would he have had he not gone to WCW? Because as you'll recall, he was the 1-2-3 kid, which worked as a while as a baby face, and then as more of a crybaby, maybe we'd call it a chicken shit heel. But there was a different version of him that we saw in the NWO, and that's the version that he came back to the WWE as. Do you think there would have been an opportunity for the evolution of the 1-2-3 kid to become X-Pac, or was WCW a necessary step, at least for him?
I think a necessary step. Obviously, he had the talent to do it. Look, Ron and I worked with Kane and X-Pac many times. That was one of the most fun groups we ever worked with. They were absolutely incredible. He was an incredible, still is, but I'm out of it now, so I'll talk past tense, an incredible wrestler. Absolutely fantastic. But it's one of those big what ifs. What if Milwaukee doesn't happen with Stone Cold? What if Triple H doesn't get punished because of the curtain call? There's always what ifs. But he made the most of it when he had a chance.
Well, I love hearing your rationale and reasoning. Now we know who is your number 5 biggest WCW fumble, but who comes in next at number 4 is Mick Foley. Now, instead of being fired a bunch of different times, as it's happened with other talents through the years, Mick Foley did have 2 very distinct runs with WCW. His initial departure in 1990 and then his final exit in 1994. Either way, he was frustrated with his character's booking, and he just felt like, when he lost that ear in the match with Vader overseas and they didn't do anything with it on TV, I think he knew at that point it removed all doubt. Hey, they don't have any plans for me. Little did we know he would go on to become one of the more iconic characters in WWE history. And that's something I don't even think Vince McMahon himself saw. Why do you categorize this as being the 4th biggest WCW fumble, John?
I think because of what he became in WWE. And I can certainly understand Eric's viewpoint in this. He didn't see it. And I'm not sure Vince McMahon saw it. I don't think they realized how talented Mick Foley was. He entered the Royal Rumble in 3 different characters. I don't think anybody saw that then. They just saw Cactus Jack and they thought maybe it was one-dimensional or whatever they thought. I don't think they realized the depth of Mick Foley. And, I don't think that's as big a fumble as it is the result of it makes it look back and go, man, what a big fumble that was. I can understand their rationale at the time, but this was a huge deal for WWE. I mean, him and Rock drew incredible ratings during the Monday Night Raw wars, and it was a huge part of us being able to overcome WCW was Mick Foley.
It sure is interesting to think, all the talent they had at one point, but when you think about the great matches that he had in WCW, we're talking about Mick Foley as Cactus Jack, and he was an incredible opponent for Sting. He had unbelievable matches with Vader. It just felt like, I don't know, a missed opportunity. Do you think that was more? Because the thing is, I'd love to be critical of anybody in particular in WCW, but even Vince McMahon himself, I don't think saw it. As the story goes, JR was basically begging, give this guy a shot. And as the famous story goes, Vince said something like, that's fine, but cover his face up, put him in a mask. And Mankind, he made it work. Like, he's probably one of, if not the biggest sleeper in the history of wrestling that promoters just seemingly didn't get on a national level.
Yeah, and especially on a national level. I mean, you didn't have, come look at what he's competing against as far as the stars. I mean, you look at guys like Luger, look at guys like Sting, look at guys like Hogan, look at all these incredible bodies that were out there, and the guys that weren't were big, just big animals. I mean, look at a guy like Vader or a guy like Diesel, who had a great body, but, it was huge. He is completely different from everybody. And I just don't think promoters saw it. They don't realize how entertaining he was. I mean, Mick could do anything. The rating numbers he drew were incredible that he did. And I don't think you're right. I don't think Vince McMahon saw it. I don't think Eric Bischoff saw it. I don't think hardly anybody saw it except for Mick.
I love his story, and I do think he's probably one of the more unsung heroes in wrestling. But I have to ask, do you think he becomes the megastar he is in WWE without stopping off in ECW? Not saying that he was never worthy of going to WWE, but I'm curious, do you think any of the character work and the long form promos, the serious promos, he was able to sort of, I don't know, color outside the lines a little bit in ECW? And do you think that perhaps caught the eye of maybe Bruce or Jim Cornette or even Vince himself?
I don't know if it caught the eye, because I don't think Stone Cold caught their eye in ECW. Stone Cold goes down there, he's cutting these hellacious promos. Ron Simmons was down there cutting great promos. Foley is too. I mean, Paul Lee really did a great job of these guys of letting them be themselves and helping them, bring out what's inside of them. That would have never happened in WCW. It would have never happened in WWE either. That ECW step was a huge part of a lot of these guys' transitions. And then all of a sudden when we get them and the business is changing to the Attitude Era, of a more realistic era, when you love promos like that, these guys had it and they were able to bring that back out. But you're right. A lot of that came from ECW. And without that, I don't think these guys are the mega stars that they are.
Well, let's keep it going, man. We're breaking down John's 5 biggest WCW fumbles. Coming up next, we've got number 3. And we're going outside the ring to ringside. Jim Ross is number 3 on your list. I'll admit, John, I was surprised to see this one on your list. It would have never occurred to me to think outside the ring. Why does JR land at number 3 for you?
Because he was the voice of the Attitude Era, and he was so good. I mean, you talk to people that listen to the Attitude Era, they all talk about Jim Ross and Jerry Lawler. And Godspeed to Jerry Lawler right now. He's having some health issues. Wonderful human being. But JR was the voice of WWE and the voice of the Attitude Era. I mean, he just had a different feel about him. He had a big game feel. He had a sports type feel. He had all those crazy, hokey, which I understood all of them, Southern sayings. He was just perfect for the Attitude Era. And if he hadn't come down here, I don't know who we'd have found. I don't know. Play-by-play guys are very rare. You look at how many play-by-play guys have made it in the last 40 years. You probably count on one hand, maybe 6 or 7, but it's not many. I mean, they're very, very few, and they're very, very rare. And he was one of them, and he was a huge part of the Attitude Era because of that.
Obviously, we're going to sort of fantasy book here, but if JR wasn't behind the desk during the Attitude Era, who do you think would have been in that spot? Not who could have done as well. I don't think we can really honestly answer that, but just literally what other body would have sat in that chair, do you think?
That's interesting, because we didn't have anybody, because Gorilla was starting to retire. You know, all we had was Vince, and then we had Gorilla, and that was pretty much it. You know, and Gordon Soley wasn't coming up. Lance Russell was certainly not coming up. And I don't know, Tony Schiavone was the other guy that's out there. And I don't know who that was out there that could have done it, because there was no other play-by-play guy during that era that really stuck his head out. You know, Joey Styles did a great job with ECW. So I don't know. I don't know who it would have been. It would have been, WWE would have had a real dilemma if they didn't have JR.
We know Lord Alfred Hayes was out of there by then, and he was always really more of a color guy. And we know that Gorilla was winding things down. Vince is going to remove himself from being on air, I think, in 97. Kevin Kelly, is he the only other answer? Maybe.
And that might be it. Yes, that was the only other one out there. The only play-by-play out there guy out there was very good. Kevin is very good. So that's the only other one I think that could have done it. Cole came along later. Vince probably would have stayed longer during that time. Vince could have stepped back, which was a huge thing for WWE. Another reason getting JR was so important, because it allowed Vince to step back from commentary to just go back to the Gorilla position and do the whole show and run the company and not have to worry about commentary, which was a big deal for our company. There aren't many guys out there. I mean, literally, you look at how many play-by-play guys there are in the history of wrestling. There aren't many. It's a tough job. I was talking to Corey Graves about it, who I think is doing an excellent job right now down at AAA. And, you know, the idea of a play-by-play guy, it's so different from sport because you're part of a show. And a lot of guys never get that, because a play-by-play guy is a step behind the action instead of a step ahead in sports. And that's a real hard dynamic for a lot of guys to swallow and be able to do. It takes putting your ego into the show and not into yourself, because at times you're going to look stupid. And you say, oh, who is that? You know it's The Undertaker. You've seen him for 52 straight weeks. But if you give it away, you rob the audience of what they themselves will reveal. And so you stand a step behind the action most of the time. That's a hard thing to do. It's a hard mindset for a lot of guys to get into.
I love hearing the way you talk about wrestling. I can't wait to hear who is your number 2 on the top 5 biggest WCW fumbles. John, is this right? You've got Steve Austin at number 2. I just assumed he would be number 1. He is the inspiration for this list. We just passed the 30-year anniversary of him getting his walking papers famously by FedEx. Before we talk about that and why he's in this spot at number 2, have you heard the FedEx story, and was it offensive to you? I've heard some guys say, oh, it's disrespectful. And other guys would say, hey man, save me a trip. If you're letting me go, I don't want to have to fly to you to get fired. What say you?
Yeah, I've been fired before, and I've been told, hey, we're not going to use you going forward, but once you come in and talk to us, no, I'm not coming in to talk to you. If one of the result of that is that I'm not coming back going forward. No, you can send me a FedEx all day. It sucks getting fired. I mean, it really sucks. Anybody who's been fired knows that. I don't care what you do. I don't care how you temper it. I don't care how you dress it up. I don't care how you get your stuff sent back. It sucks. So I'd rather just get it by a FedEx box and, you know what? I'm at home. I don't have to go anywhere today. I've been fired. Let me figure out what I'm going to do.
It is interesting to think how it all could have been different. I mean, not just the WWF and WCW and Steve Austin's career, but just wrestling as a whole. I don't know what their standards and practices, the way they were in Turner, if they would have ever allowed him to swear and drink beer and flip the middle finger. I mean, I know we saw some of that stuff in WCW, and that's not to say that that's what got him over, but those were such iconic parts of the Stone Cold Steve Austin repertoire. We're seeing a lot of screen grabs of his time in WCW. And even back then, guys like Dave Meltzer were saying, in a few years, Steve Austin will be regarded as the best wrestler in the world. I mean, people saw the upside in him, and then maybe there were some attitude issues or personality issues, or maybe there was just emotions running high on the heels of an injury. But it comes to an impasse, and little did we know the plain black trunks and the plain black boots, they hit. But would they have worked in WCW, do you think?
No, I don't think so. I don't think any of it would have worked, and I don't think it ever would have happened. Steve was, and when Meltzer says this, and I can't read Dave's mind, and if I could, I'd probably hate to because he just bashed me out of it. But I certainly can't. What he's saying is he's going to be one of the best wrestlers in the world. I don't think he was saying he's going to be one of the biggest draw in the history of wrestling. He certainly wasn't saying that, but he was. I don't know if he's talking about just one of the best wrestlers or talking about the biggest draw in wrestling. I don't know if anybody could see that with Steve. You knew he's going to be one of the best wrestlers. He was one of the best wrestlers. He was actually a better wrestler probably when he's with the Hollywood Blondes than he was later because he was injured and he couldn't do as much. Now, he was a better worker then, but he could get so much more out of what he was doing. And, he became the biggest draw in either him or Londos, the history of the business. Any building you put his name on in the world, we sold out. He was that big. I mean, it was inexplicable how hot Stone Cold was. You had to see it to believe it. And you had to see the arenas a year before he got hot and then see him a year later when he's selling every single building out. It was just unreal. But if he doesn't get fired, he doesn't go to ECW. He doesn't start cutting these promos and learning what he really is. And then he doesn't come to WWE with this edge on him. If he'd have came to WWE directly and had been the ringmaster, he probably would have just had a great career, probably a Hall of Fame career with Ted DiBiase and been great. But because he went to ECW, because he was fired, because he had this edge on his chip on his shoulder, he became legendary. And I say legendary. You might find a bigger draw, maybe Londos or Hogan. I don't know, but it's greater. I don't know if they are or not. I know when he got hot, any building in the world you put his name on, we sold out. He was that good. And I don't think any of that happens without him having that progression to ECW and then to WWE.
I love hearing your perspective on that, but I'm really curious if he is one of the greatest draws of all time. What can possibly be the number one biggest WCW fumble in history? John, you have down The Undertaker over Austin. I'm surprised. Talk me through this.
Because I think you could recognize The Undertaker. This was a toss up to me, and I went back and forth with this. So it's not like number one is way ahead of number two. They're pretty much even to me, and I had to flip a coin and figure out which one was one and which one was two. I just think that when you say a big fumble, you fire Steve, you fired a great worker. All of a sudden he becomes this thing that you didn't realize that was going to happen. With Undertaker, you've got this 6'10" guy that can work, who's a hell of an athlete. You can't find something for him. That's why I say that's a bigger fumble to me than a Stone Cold. When you've got a guy can work, who's a big, tough guy, who carries himself like a champion, even when he was Mean Mark, and you say that this guy can't draw money, which is what Ole Anderson said, which is one of the most buffoon comments of all time. You can't find something for him. That's why I think that's the biggest fumble in WCW's history.
There's no doubt that these are all fumbles. I mean, who would have ever guessed that The Undertaker would have actually been maybe one of the first Paul Heyman guys? Mm-hmm. Those guys were an act in WCW as Mean Mark Callis and Paulie Dangerously, and who would have ever guessed that their careers would turn out the way they did? And I think really on some level, everybody had to take a look at that zombie character that The Undertaker was, whatever he was, and think this has a shelf life. I don't think anybody guesses that any one performer could make that gimmick work for a decade, much less more than two, right?
Yeah, absolutely. There's nobody that can make that work except for Mark Calloway. Absolutely no one. I mean, you put anybody in that character, it could be an interesting character. You're going to sell a few action figures. That's about it. You're not going to have this legendary run where you're this Mr. WrestleMania and you're 20-0. You're never going to have any of that from anybody else in the entire planet other than Mark Calloway. There's no way. He's just that good. He took something that was pretty hokey on paper, and turn it into something that everybody loves. I mean, to this day, man, I love The Undertaker. Okay, do you really want me to explain the whole character to you? And then you realize how silly it is? Nobody cares. It's because of Mark Calloway. He's that good. And I don't think that WCW could see something like that. They certainly could see he was this huge guy who had tons of athletic ability. I mean, this is just dropping the ball by Ole Anderson. which shows you that Ole could do some stupid stuff.
You know, we hear Bruce say it all the time, or we used to back when he did his own podcast. And he would say that so-and-so was playing wrestler. And I'm not trying to throw anybody under the bus, but this is a pretty over the top character. And I think you hit the nail on the head when you said the word hokey, because for some reason, the hokiest stuff in the world didn't come off hokey when he was doing it. But when WCW tried like an over the top character like this, say the Dungeon of Doom or Glacier, it always came off like, man, this is some silly B movie Elvira stuff. But for some reason, the Undertaker's approach to it was different. Do you think that's because he was just committed, or was there something else? Was there a coolness underneath to the real life Mark Calloway that came through the Undertaker? Or why was he able to make it not feel hokey and seemingly no one else could do that?
Yeah, there's also was Chronic tried to pull an APA skit one time, and I talked to Crush about it one time. I said, you know, they were like sitting in a like a sauna or something. They're like they're naked or something, and you know, there was no women around, and it just didn't look cool. You know, just looked like two old dudes sitting in a sauna somewhere. And I told Crush later, I said, if you're going to impersonate us, at least make it cool. He said, yeah, that didn't work like we planned. He was laughing about it, and we were too. You know, two good dudes. They did a lot of copycat stuff. So did we. That most of it didn't work. And most of it didn't work because stuff that worked because of the characters in them. I mean, you can put a guy in a Stone Cold gimmick, it ain't gonna work. No, there's no way. There'd never be another Stone Cold, just like there's never be another Hogan or Undertaker or Shawn Michaels or any of these guys. I think it was underneath coolness of Mark Calloway. I mean, he's just Cool Hand Luke, man. I mean, he's just always that way. He's the guy that, you know, I saw him at AAA when I was down there. He now is, you know, big man in charge. And he's got a coolness about him now to this day. And, you know, he's not even getting close to the ring except to produce stuff. And he's still got that coolness about him.
Well, that'll do it, boys and girls. We've broken down John Bradshaw Layfield's top 5 biggest WCW fumbles. What do you think wasn't on John's list? What does your top 5 list look like? We want to hear your suggestions and your comments below.
Hey, and one other thing, Conrad, for the fans to ask, does the Attitude Era go a different direction if not for some of these fumbles? Does WCW win the war?
Okay.
Without any of these fumbles? I mean, these guys are, you know, they're all Hall of Famers. You know, they all headlined WrestleMania or called WrestleMania or whatever. You know, these guys were the reasons that we won this war, a big part of it. A lot of these guys. So does it change without these guys, and which ones?
You know, we should also ask, you know, when we're talking about, hey, does it change? It's really in two directions. Like, I don't know that Steve Austin would have helped WCW win the war, but he wouldn't have helped the WWE win the war. So by like Steve Austin, I don't know that he would have ever achieved the heights of Stone Cold Steve Austin in WCW, but as long as he didn't achieve those heights in the WWE, WCW still wins, right?
That's right. The same with Mick Foley.
Yes.
You know, Mick Foley apparently had a shelf life down there that was not going to be that long because they let him go, and, you know, did not have something for him as entertaining as he is, and as much that as he still had left in him. So if he stays, he's not Mankind. He's not Dude Love. He's not doing all this stuff with The Rock. But if he stays there, he doesn't come to WWE, and that's a big deal.
Guys, it's time to enter the room. Dig first. Blue Chew's not just a tablet. It's a cheat code for your crotch. Stronger, harder, longer lasting. Like somebody gave your downstairs a pep talk at a gym membership. Blue Chew is the original brand offering chewable tablets for better sex. Last time I took a Blue Chew, my dick got sponsored by an energy drink company and refused to do missionary, saying it was, quote, bad for the brand, extreme positions only. Okay, we're kidding around. But guys, this isn't just about performance. This is about your legacy. Or your third legacy. Give her group chat something to talk about. Nothing makes you more of a legend than a little Blue Chew. Seriously, go discover your options right now at bluechew.com. You'll be glad you did, because we've got a special deal for our listeners. As always, you can get your first month of Blue Chew free. Just use the promo code WRESTLE at checkout. Pay the $5 for shipping. That's it. Join Blue Chew's mission to upgrade humanity one thrust at a time. Head on over to bluechew.com for details and important safety information. And a big thanks to Blue Chew for sponsoring today's podcast.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. It's time to count down the top 5. Brought to you by SaveWithConrad.com.
But the match that everybody was talking about was John Cena and Logan Paul. They went 26 minutes and 20 seconds. It was a really long match, and by everyone I saw, it was really, really well received. Man, people can't say enough nice things about Logan Paul. Did you get a chance to see this match? What'd you think?
I saw the highlights of it, and it's exactly what I would expect. John Cena is in his element here. You know, I didn't think he was in his element necessarily as a heel because, and I don't mean because he can't be, he calls a match better when he's a babyface, and so you got to call what's comfortable to you. And that guy, John is our Logan Paul. Just put him over like he's some freaking, I think he called him Picasso or something. I completely agree. I've seen so many of John's matches because I was doing commentary during his great run. And I completely agree. Cena was in his element here, and he's with a guy that can work in Logan Paul. And I mean that, a guy that can work.
Incredible praise from Logan Paul afterwards for John Cena. I love when he shows a little respect. And you can tell how seriously he takes professional wrestling now. We're talking, of course, about Logan Paul. But speaking of paying respect, a lot of people noticed that John Cena was using some different maneuvers as a part of this match. John actually said, everyone knows I don't pick opponents. I'm at my best when it's the open challenge. Like, wow, this is a revitalization of John Cena. I always want to be a platform for people to give their best. And John says he doesn't have enough dates left to face everybody who was influential in his career, which is why he started using some special moves in his matches. We saw him hit a Styles Clash and End of Days, so you could see a little tip of the cap. And I thought, hey, man, that's kind of a fun idea. What if we broke down your top 5 finishers? So that's what we're going to do now. We asked you before we went live today for you to rank your top 5 favorite finishes. And at number 5, you brought in Eddie Guerrero's Frog Splash. Tell us, John, why is Eddie Guerrero and the Frog Splash make your top 5 finishers?
Because I picked finishes that became iconic. And you'll see the finishers I picked. People are probably going to disagree with far as they're not the greatest moves of all time. And they're not. The Frog Splash is a great move, but it's not, these guys are doing 450 splashes, 630 splashes. They're doing all this crazy shit now. But that move, look at how many people have copied Eddie's move. And by the way, there's a great video out there. I talked to Chavo about it. He hadn't seen the video. It was who was the wrestler? Heparin, the luchador that Eddie got the Frog Splash for. There's a video out there. It wasn't Art Barr. People talk about Art Barr, but there's this video on YouTube now that Eddie talks about where he got the Frog Splash, and the guy had his arms and legs spread, and it looked like a frog. He says Art got it from him. So that's coming out of Eddie Guerrero's own words on a YouTube video, which I thought was kind of interesting. But, there's nothing like Eddie Guerrero's Frog Splash. I chose great finishers because they're iconic. Look at how many people want to copy this now. I chose great finishers because of what they did to the crowd. When Eddie Guerrero went up there on that top rope and he came off that Frog Splash, man, it was like Superfly Snuka, man, I had some honorable mentions out there, and Superfly is one of them. There was nothing like it. Some guys' finishes are good and people know that they're the finish, but when it's an exclamation point and the crowd goes nuts because the 3 is taken for granted, that to me is a great finish, and that was the Frog Splash.
Coming in at number 4 on your top 5 finishers is the Lariat from Stan Hansen. Probably no surprise to longtime fans of your career, but why does the Lariat from Stan Hansen make your top 5?
The most over finish in Japanese history, and there's no doubt about it. If you ever saw Stan wrestle on video or anything, all he had to do, because he'd pull up his elbow pad right before he hit the Lariat, was reach for that elbow pad just a little bit during the match and start pulling it up. He could be selling, he could be on the ground, he could be outside the ring, but when people saw that, you would see the Japanese fans start going, ooh, and it'd build and it'd build and it'd build. All he had to do was just barely pull that elbow pad. It was that over. I'm telling you, that's one of the most over finishes of all time. A guy that can get it over like that, to me, top 5.
It's interesting that you pointed out just the slight adjustment of the elbow pad. How critical do you think that is to the success of getting a move over? Like DDP would call for the diamond cutter. Jake the Snake would call for, the DDT. And we know, Shawn Michaels stands in the corner to tune up the band. And we've seen how Randy would pound the canvas. Do you think the setup is really important? I mean, does it need to be a 1-2 punch like that just to tease, even like Lawler dropping the strap before the pile driver? Is that necessary, do you think, to really level up to a main event finisher?
Yeah, I think it helps. I think it helps a lot to have something like that. Ox Baker, who was one of my honorable mentions because apparently he killed 2 people. I'm not sure. Ray Gunkel's autopsy and who was the other guy that he supposedly killed? I can't. Anyway, he killed 2, and neither one did he kill, but they did die after the match. Ox Baker would start loosening it up with a club to the chest. Stan Stasiak wouldn't. Certain guys wouldn't. But Ox Baker would loosen it up, by hitting the chest a little bit. People start going, "Oh my God, here comes the heart punch! Here comes the heart punch!" It was such a big deal. I think the setup is very important. And Stan's was so subtle. That's why Stan's in the top 5. He literally would just reach and start pulling up the elbow pad. He could be doing anything, and everybody in the arena would notice it and start murmuring. You could hear it.
I think the name you were looking for, as far as the list of guys that Ox Baker killed, which I don't think he did, Ray Gunkel and Alberto Torres.
Was it Alberto Torres? I thought it was somebody else, but that's
a quick Google search says. Who knows though?
I will take that. The first person I thought it was somebody else, but it could be. I don't remember.
Here's what we'll never forget.
Apparently, Alberto Torres is dead, so something happened to him. Whether it's a heart punch or something happened to him.
Sounds like it may have been a lariat. Yeah, let's talk about Hulk Hogan's leg drop. That's a move nobody will forget, and it comes in at number 3 on your top 5 list of finishers. And I got to be honest with you. I think everybody who's watching this assumes he's going to find a way to work the frog splash in because he loves Eddie. He's going to find a way to work the lariat in because he loves Stan Hansen. But the leg drop, by anyone else, except maybe Yokozuna, is kind of an elementary move, and it makes your top 5 list. Why is that, John?
Because it's so iconic. I mean, when Hogan would line up for that leg drop, people would go nuts. I mean, Hogan was so freaking over. Was it a hokey finish? Yeah, it was as hokey as it could be. Guys are doing leg drops off the top rope now and doing leg flips. Booker T did it where he did a flip, so did Too Cold Scorpio. A lot of guys, did much more dramatic moves, even with the leg drop. But you said that picture's iconic. And you don't even look to see who's at the bottom. All you do is look to see it's Hogan. That poor Hogan, that's why he's had such a bad back, was because he's dropping that leg all the time. Undertaker had, I think, an elbow off the top rope for a while. And that was Undertaker used the heart punch for a while because he was trained by Ox Baker. But he had to drop off the top rope, his elbow drop or leg drop or something. And somebody finally told him, said, "You're not going to have hips when you get to be 40 if you do this." Same thing with Hogan. That's why his back was so bad. But that iconic finish, I mean, him standing above Andre when he's dropping the leg and that big picture, I mean, there was nothing more iconic than that leg drop from the 80s. Now, Conrad, let me ask you, from the 80s, what finish would beat the leg drop?
Almost nothing.
I mean, as far as just being iconic, I mean,
yeah.
Hogan was. You're right. I don't mean as far as a good finish. It was the shits.
But the Snuka Splash was cool, and Randy Savage's elbow off the top.
Correct.
But I agree. When you think about wrestling in the 80s, there was no bigger star than Hulk Hogan. I mean, the WWF was built on his name. I know Dave is going nuts saying figure four, buddy. It was not.
I disagree with that. And no offense to Mr. Dave Silver, the stud muffin himself, but that figure 4 never worked most of the time.
No, Rick, he won 16 titles, and those were the only times he won with the. He's like,
right.
I'm 16 and 900.
That's right. He put the figure 4 on everybody. He never won with it.
That's right. Stone Cold Steve Austin, Stone Cold Stunner comes in at number 2. One
of the greatest finishes of all time, and one of the reasons you can good finish, Conrad, is something you can do on everybody. That's why Brock Lesnar doing the F5. Most people couldn't do that to everybody. Brock Lesnar can because he's a freak. But you got the Stone Cold Stunner. It's such an easy finish, and it was so freaking over. It still is. People still trying to copy it. And it became almost a cottage industry with who could sell Steve Stunner the best. You know, Razor Ramon would do the stagger, and do another one, then do this big flip. You know, it was awesome. I mean, everybody but Vince McMahon would who had the worst stunner ever. You finally get the boss, and it's like the most anticlimactic finish ever.
I can't even believe this is real, but your number one top finisher
yes, sir,
is one that I personally can't stand and don't understand. The Von Erich Iron Claw. Of course, we're talking about the iconic one from Fritz Von Erich. He built an entire territory out it, so I guess it works. But John, the number one most over finisher, your favorite finisher, please explain.
Conrad, they made a Hollywood movie named after this finish. That's how over this thing was. It wasn't a good finish. No, it was horrible. I've been in several claws. I wrestled Kevin and Kerry a lot, so I got to be in a few claws. It's the most hokey thing there is. Conrad, I agree with all of it. It was so over. They made a movie about it. I mean, you got to understand these guys in Texas. When Fritz got the thing from Ed McLemore, and he went up to Boston, and he became Fritz Von Erich, you know. And had developed this iron claw, you know, like Rashke had it, Mulligan had it. The Sheik actually used a claw for a while. Carl Gotch used a claw for a while. But you couldn't do that today. Nobody buy it. But the fact that they did it, and it's just one of the most iconic things ever, it will always be tied to the Von Erichs because of this. So to me, you don't have a movie yet of the Stunner. You don't have a movie yet of the Lariat. You do have Japanese commentators yelling, Lariato! But that kind of goes a long way. That's why he's in the top 5. But you have a movie after the Iron Claw.
Well, boys and girls, we want to hear from you about what your top 5 finishers are. Drop them in the comments. I can't wait to hear some of your criticisms because I think people are coming after you for Hogan's leg drop and certainly the Iron Claw. You might get a pass on the others, but I do want to mention before we wrap it up, you had some honorable mentions.
Yes.
You mentioned Ox Baker's Heart Punch, which we've talked about, an iconic character. I mean, he looks like he's right out of Central.
Over like crazy.
And then you also listed another old school one. You have a flying tackle down here? I got to hear about this.
Yeah, Gus Sonnenberg. Gus Sonnenberg was an incredible football player. And during the Depression, Gus Sonnenberg came along. They had a big screw job in 1925. It was Wayne Munn and Stanislaus Sabisco. You had Strangler Lewis that was bringing in Wayne Munn, who's this big, good-looking football player, 6'6", good-looking guy, but he wasn't a shooter. He wasn't a wrestler. And Stanislaus Sabisco came in, took advantage of him, was paid off, and it killed the match that they were going to build between Wayne Munn and Strangler Lewis. There were lawsuits going back and forth. It really hurt the business. And you had Londos was getting popular at that time, but along comes Gus Sonnenberg. Gus Sonnenberg was this really popular guy, football player, and he had the flying tackle. There's videos of it on the internet. It's more like just a flying headbutt. It's really not that great, but at the time it was revolutionary. And what it did was it brought in the flying part to wrestling. Gus Sonnenberg was the one who changed the business completely. And this flying tackle was so freaking over. He was selling out arenas all through the Great Depression. What happened to Gus Sonnenberg was they did an expose on him, and they found that he was wrestling John Hawk in Dallas and then wrestling JBL in New York. And then he was wrestling Vampiro Americano in LA, and he's wrestling Death Mask in San Diego. Then he's wrestling another one of my iterations that didn't work, Bradshaw, somewhere else. And they found out that all these guys were using fake names, and he's wrestling the same guys. And at that point, the business was, had been exposed a lot, but that really exposed Sonnenberg and killed him. I mean, killed his career. People talk about the wrestling business being exposed now. This was in the 20s around 1930 when this happened. They first did the expose on Sonnenberg. Absolutely killed him. Then Londos came in right after that and had his second run, and he was, bigger than ever. But Gus Sonnenberg changed the wrestling business with the showmanship. He wasn't a shooter, was not, a tough guy, played football, big, tough, strong guy. You saw a picture of him, but he absolutely changed the wrestling business. And because of that, I give him honorable mention for the flying tackle.
Yeah, he was active from 1928 to 1942. So you're getting some knowledge here today on Something to Wrestle. You also list Ed Strangler Lewis's headlock. I got to hear.
That's right, Ed Strangler Lewis. You look at any of these old picks, like with Jack Dempsey, like with the old Bronco Nagurski, with any of these old fighters that came along, they all wanted to be put in a headlock by Strangler Lewis. He worked the headlock into people believing that was a huge submission move, and he'd work it the whole match. You know, Strangler Lewis was one of the great draws from 19 teens to into the 1930s. You know, he finally had the big match with Londos and put Londos over, and that catapulted Londos to this superstardom. But Strangler Lewis was the guy, man. He was the guy all during this time after Gotch and Hackenschmidt in 14 or 15 when they worked, and then Gotch retired. The business went dead. Then you had the Spanish flu. Then you had the World War I. You had so many things that happened, but Strangler Lewis was the one constant during this entire time. And the move that got over, every Hollywood star, when it got big in, like, say, the 1930s that came in, they wanted to be put in a headlock and had a picture taken. That move was incredibly over by Strangler Lewis.
We got to mention the last one, and I know it's a special one for you because, well, he was the guy in your last match. Rey Mysterio 619 makes your honorable mention list. Listen, it is a unique move. I think everybody remembers the first time they saw this. What can you tell us? Why does the 619 make JBL's top 5?
Again, how many people copy it? You know, how many people want to copy it and make something of it? It's that big. You know, to see Ray come running and the build up to it is just incredible. Now, this doesn't take anything away. When you talk about the most intricate finishes about reverse pile drivers and these flips and these flops, these young kids are doing incredible stuff these days, but they're not any more over than the 619. I mean, the 619 for decades now has been the move that everybody goes crazy for. Let somebody get kicked and somehow mysteriously turn around and end up on the middle rope. Funny how that always happens. And then there goes Ray taking off. The place goes absolutely ballistic. I've seen it happen time after time after time again. That's the essence of a great finish. And then when he hits it, everybody knows it's over. I mean, it's just the essence of a great finish to me. So, hey, Conrad, you disagree with number 1 and 3, don't you?
No, listen, I love Hulk Hogan. I mean, he's the reason I'm doing this podcast. He's the reason I became a wrestling fan. I just don't think I would have necessarily picked it. But when you explained, I think people are looking for, I wouldn't have been surprised if we would have seen like the Diamond Cutter or the RKO or.
Yeah, I tell you what, the RKO, I should have given an honorable mention to that. I should have, because that is incredibly iconic. I made a mistake by not giving the RKO at least honorable mention, because so many people have in regular, you know, in the Twitterverse and everything, come up with these RKOs into pulls on RKOs and different stuff. I mean, it's become this iconic move that has transcended the business. And that was what I chose that was what I looked at when I chose great finishers. Was not just, hey, is it a great move? Is it whatever? Does the crowd acknowledge it? Does the crowd go crazy? And are people imitating it out in the real world, for lack of a better term? And they are with the RKO. So yes, I would put the RKO at least in honorable mention. That was a mistake.
I think some people are going to look for power bombs and choke slams and high risk maneuvers, things like that. Yeah. One thing I would have been surprised that wasn't here, I just would have assumed that Jake Roberts' DDT. I know you were talking about iconic finishes in the 80s, and that's obviously not nearly as famous as Hulk Hogan. So I give you that one. Like, if you're just looking for what everybody knows, they know that one. But in the confines of wrestling, and nobody kicked out of Jake's DDT.
Guys were giving Jake a hard time one time backstage. And they go, was there your DDT and every other DDT being used every other match? And he goes, mine beats people. I said, that's a great answer. And that's another mistake. That is another, that should have been at least honorable mention. Jake's finish. So many people talk about the Snake's DDT. Just in regular culture, it's transcended the business. And by the way, the first choke slam was Yusuf Ismail, the Terrible Turk, around the 1890s. Used to grab a guy with one hand and would end up choke slamming him in those hard-ass rings back then.
SaveWithConrad.com.
My name is Rajiv. I'm in Sacramento, California. I came to Save with Conrad because I've heard Conrad talk about how he helps people all the time save money and the best route to go for getting some mortgages and finances done. And having heard so many different testimonials in the past, it made the most sense to go this route. We were in the market for a new house and we wanted to know what we could afford. So we spoke with Steve and then Diane to get through the pre-approval process to see what we could afford. And then once we were able to understand that aspect of it, that was when we were able to shop around for a house to get a mortgage through Save with Conrad. Everybody on the team was great. Everybody really explained everything fully to where it was more in like layman's terms to where I could understand it as someone not in the business or having shopped around for houses too many times. So being able to understand every step of the process and talking with everyone on the team about that was really, really helpful. And it made me feel really confident that I was going the right route. I would definitely recommend Save with Conrad to others. I know that sometimes people look at it and they go, oh, they're based in Alabama. What could they help me with? But I'm out here in California and they were able to square everything away and get things done really quickly, as opposed to sometimes even people out here don't move as quickly as the Save with Conrad team. So everything was really well done, really efficient, and I would definitely recommend Save with Conrad to others. My name is Rajiv. I'm in Sacramento, California, and I was able to get into my dream home with SaveWithConrad.com.
That's number 2129, Equal Housing Lender. SaveWithConrad.com.